What's going on, everyone? This is the Go Along Podcast. Tyler Dunn here with Jim Monis at Fatty Beer Company. And Jim, I always love it when we have a guest, including one who likes beer and likes having a good time as much as us. Paul Denner Jr., Cincinnati Bengals beat writer, The Athletic. You've heard him, you've seen him. We did this. It feels like it was yesterday, Paul, that we were talking about the 2022 season. And you blink, you look up, and here we are. It's December. How in the hell are you?
Yeah, no, the season's spinning pretty fast. This is really actually crappy for me because I have to sit here and watch you guys drink beer in front of me while I talk to you while my beer is waiting on me at the place I'm going to after this. This is tough. I just want everybody to know the sacrifice that I'm putting forth at this moment.
So basically, we need to be better hosts at Go Long. We need to give you a heads up that you can't have a beer on this pod.
I didn't know this was a Friday afternoon drinking podcast. I mean, if I would have known that, first of all, I'd sign up to come on every week, but I also would be more prepared. I feel prepared, but I'll try to make up for it with Bengals stuff.
I give better Rex Ryan stories when I have a couple of these.
I don't know that I would hear the like 4 beers in Rex Ryan stories, honestly.
It is true. I mean, we did a draft extravaganza, 2021 draft, and Jim, you had a few pops in you. Oof. And by a few, I mean, how many do you think you had?
It was a good day.
Day and night.
They say you can't drink all day unless you start in the morning. So
a lot of stories were flowing that night. A lot of stories, but we've got a lot of Bengal fans, a lot of readers, a lot of listeners, Paul. So we're gonna just make you a recurring guest, whether you like it or not. So.
Okay.
We'll put you in beer whenever I do see you in person. I owe you that for you're just an awesome dude in addition to being one of the best beat writers in the country. So, there's people that are listening to this probably before the game against Kansas City, but mostly after the game. We'll talk big picture. Cincinnati, defending AFC champs, state of the franchise. Take it any direction you want. Where is this team right now?
They're in a great place. I just think they have been through a lot this year. They sort of took their Advil and shook off the Super Bowl hangover, and they found a way to get their new pieces up front to kind of take some time to gel. It was a work in progress. They've lost Jamar Chase for a month. They dealt with losing DJ Reader, which is a bigger loss than most know. They lost their number one corner in Chidobe Awuzie, who, Tyler, you know how good he is and how important he is to the kind of the soul of this team. And yet here they have been. They've worked their way back into form where I think they feel that they are a team that needs to be said in the same breath with the Chiefs and the Bills and the Dolphins in the AFC. And I think their play lately has backed that up. Joe Burrow has evolved this year, which people probably don't think about because he's been so good everywhere he's been. He's taken them to the Super Bowl, but his game has really changed this year in that he's not deep shot reliant. He's really understood situational football and played the percentages at such a high level to create an efficient offense as defenses have really just refused to let him beat them over the top. And that's really kind of been what's moved them to this place they're at, where now they feel like they're entering this December where they have the toughest schedule in football left, but they love it. And the symbol of that was this phrase that came out last week that was yelled by defensive assistant Mark Duffner, who's been around the league forever. Duff is well-traveled, but he is he's awesome. Nobody is more intense after wins. And he screamed out it was a social media video of the game ball presentation by Zach Taylor. And he said, last night, everybody was talking about the schedule, and he just screamed, "They got to play on!" at the top of his lungs. And it has become a bit of a rally cry around here. And it's more than that, though. It's really kind of given a real insight to the state of this team. They think that they're the best team in this league. And they think it's stupid that everybody only wants to talk about the Bengals' schedule. The fact that they got to play the Chiefs and the Bills and Deshaun Watson and Tom Brady and Lamar Jackson again. And I think people need to be recognizing what they've been doing and who they are and are incredibly motivated to go prove it over this next month and a half before entering the playoffs, and the opportunity's right there in front of them. So all that is a long way of saying what I said at the beginning. They feel like they're in a really good place right now.
You know what I like what you said there, Paul? Made me think of how it is about they have to play us. When I was with the Saints during the glory years, the Super Bowl, I'm telling you, you could have been ranked whatever defensively going into that game. Don't care. Don't care who your top pass rusher is. I'm sure he's a stud. Don't care who the corner is. You have to play us. We know we're getting our 30. If the bounces go, if you're playing another team that can score, we're going to have a shootout.
And but that starts with Burrow, the same way it started with Breeze, that when I talked about his evolution, that's what it's been. It's that his tool belt has so many more tools in it this year, and that he just shows up and figures out what kind of game it's going to be in the first couple of drives and how you want him to beat you today. And he's been pretty good at doing it, in that whether you want him to just complete 85% of his balls and throw underneath and have 10-play drives, he's done that on repeat, to the point that defensive coordinators lose their patience and say, screw it, all right, we'll go back to man. And then they go to man, and then it's T. Higgins on deep balls, or Jamar on the side, and he's picking it apart. And that's been the thing, is that Burrow has added those tools, understood at a far higher level how to avoid the negative plays. And it's made them dangerous, where it's like, whatever, man, whatever you guys want to do, he knows the way to go out and win the game.
I love that point. I mean, that was we both talked to Dan Pitcher, the quarterback's coach, a handful of times, and they've got such a great relationship. But that's really what he broke down. It's taking what that defense gives you, but the second that they go single high, or the second you have an opportunity to go deep, like, take it. And I feel like the polar opposite of where the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow are at right now is what we saw last night with Mac Jones and the Patriots, where on the broadcast, like Kirk Herbstreit and Al Michaels, like they're saying, oh yeah, they're frustrated, but like, look at what we're seeing here. There's two safeties sitting back. There's nothing available. And then Mac Jones is bitching and screaming and saying, we gotta throw, and he's right. Like, we gotta take chances, but like, between the play calling being terrible with Matt Patricia, between a quarterback who isn't pulling the trigger when he maybe has an opportunity here and there, it's like a mess in the passing game.
There it is.
And then you look at Joe Burrow and the Bengals, and they're patient when they have to be patient, but they're still taking the chance when they have to take a chance. What does that really look like up close, Paul? Because now they get Jamar Chase back, and right, it's going to unlock so much with this offense.
You know what's interesting? And so we have a writer in Philadelphia, Matt Gelb, who, I don't know if you've heard of Matt.
Are you kidding me?
Covers the Phillies, right?
I had a few of these with Matt Gelb at Syracuse. He's a good buddy. Yeah.
Matt wrote an incredible story about the Phillies before the World Series, and it was about how losing Bryce Harper changed everything for them this season, and that it forced so many other people to be uncomfortable and to know that they had to do more and find ways to get more out of themselves. And it put them in the right position to be a more well-rounded team. And when they dropped Bryce Harper back in at the end, they really took off. Baseball and football are different in that way, but the mindset here has been the same. I think Burrow was very comfortable with Jamar as a crutch early this year. Like, it's just so easy. And they would joke, and we would joke, the second they saw a man, because they weren't seeing a lot of it, you knew it was where it was going. It's going to one. He's just going to do whatever, and that's what it is. It was so ingrained. And I just think there's a comfort level that you have with that, where you forget and you don't worry as much about everybody else. You don't involve everybody else. You don't develop as much those other aspects of your offense. When he went down, they were forced to do that on the fly. And then you have Trent Irwin and Samaje Perine, and T. Higgins came back as a number one guy, and Tyler Boyd was moving around more than he was before and being effective that way. They really revitalized the efficiency of their run game. Like, all of that stuff, I'm not going to say it's because Jamar Chase is out, but it really forced them to focus on that other stuff and being way more effective in throwing checkdowns. Something as simple as that, as being quicker it always being in the right spot, the guys making guys miss out there more often. Like that stuff matters in the big picture of being a well-rounded offense and having to have, like we said, all those tools. And now you drop Chase back into it, and they hope they'll have the Bryce Harper returns effect that you can then just drop it in and it flies all the way back in. So I think it was good. Well, now in retrospect, when they go 3-1 for them, it was good. But that Chase walked away because I think it forced the entire offense to kind of develop itself a little bit more.
Real quick on that point, and I feel like we don't talk about that enough with the development of a young quarterback. We both grew up watching Brett Favre, right?
Yes.
And Favre, what did he do early in his career? Where the hell Sterling Sharp? Like,
just kept throwing to him.
Yeah, chuck it up. And then Sterling Sharp tragically breaks his neck, sprinters over in 1994. Right. And you got Robert Brooks and like Anthony Morgan and Antonio Freeman. And
that's when
they're getting hurt, but it forced him to be like disciplined.
But it also is when you have the right guy at quarterback, because whoever Green Bay had, that offense was going to be good no matter what because of the quarterback. Now, to find that's the quarterback receiver combo, that's special. To be that elite.
And Burrow wasn't even reckless like Favre was.
Not even close.
You know,
they're not even.
That's what's crazy. He's so smart with how he reads the field.
I agree that Burrow has taken. I always thought Lamar. It's Mahomes and Josh Allen, and then. And I thought Lamar was number 3. Not anymore. I think Burrow is by far number 3. He was knocking there, but these are for the nobody cares about quarterback rankings that we all have. Here's a question I want to go. Front office. Duke Tobin and Taylor. Do they have a great relationship, a good relationship? Is it built for sustained success? And if they don't go to a Super Bowl, knowing Burrow is the franchise quarterback here in the next 2 to 3 years, does anybody lose their job over this? Meaning Taylor. Because Burrow isn't going anywhere.
Yeah, and Duke's not going anywhere.
And Duke's not going anywhere either. Right.
He's basically a Brown. I mean, he's
I guess what I'm saying is, right. No, you're right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
He's right. I guess what I'm asking, and now we just said that, would Duke Tobin or would somebody fire Taylor? Knowing that they have to beat Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a great question. Here's the thing. I mean, so the first time Duke Tobin ever sat on the podium inside the Bengals press conference room, now he had done stuff before and he's obviously been very involved, but the first time he sat up there, he was next to Mike Brown and Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor was the first time where here's Duke Tobin presenting his coach, right? This was as much Duke's hire, Duke's person, as anybody in the building. They found each other in a lot of ways, and they have kind of been in lockstep in the way they view personnel, in the way they view team building. I think they taught each other a lot in the process, and I think they feel as bonded as anything. Now, I'm not in all those conversations all the time. I know them, and I know what they say about each other. And I know how many times they have hit home runs for each other, that I'm sure there's a lot of love between the two. They've had a lot of tough decisions that they've had to work through as a personnel coach combo. And we know how different the Bengals are to most in that respect. That's a big deal. And they've hit on drafts since Zach has gotten here at a higher rate than probably anybody else in football when you look at up to down, top to bottom. And so, for that reason, I think they have a great relationship that is sustainability. And there's one thing that they treasure here, I can say with 100% certainty more than any other place in the National Football League, and it's patience. It is. They're never going to knee jerk. They're never going to look, Marvin was here for 16 years. They believe in giving time. And they kept Zach at 625-1 after 2 years. How many organizations? I'll answer it. How many organizations other than this would have kept their coach after 2 years? I think that tells you where they're at with believing in him.
Well, devil's advocate, did Burrow help?
A little bit.
Oh, absolutely. No, this is not me saying that Zach Taylor.
No, maybe it goes to show, just be really, really terrible
and get a quarterback
tank.
and then
tank. No, They weren't.
No.
And that,
No, but I love hearing that about
that's
Duke.
not the story. Isn't that the story for every team? You either get the quarterback.
It's all we talk about.
You either get one, and then we can talk about how the coaches compete against each other, because there's like 8 of them that have real QBs, and then they battle against each other with the other parts.
I want to see Tom Brady's Christmas. Who's getting him gifts? Josh McDaniels, Patricia, all those guys.
But look at like even Zach Taylor's brother Press. I mean, they've got a quote unquote generational guy, and it's been tough with Trevor Lawrence. It is also simplistic to say get a stud, Heisman Trophy winning, can't miss prospect, and everything else. Like the Bengals have done a lot around Burrow too.
This is and we talk about this. It's Trevor's rookie year.
Yeah, that is. Yeah,
I'm not giving up on him yet, because I do see Doug Peterson's a good football coach.
I want to ask you though, Paul, because you see it day in and day out, but outside looking in, a lot of people love to mock the Bengals for like how short-staffed they are, and how they just don't pay for scouts and all over the country and personnel people.
It changed a little, I think,
but there's got to be some benefits to. Maybe this is a spin zone of all spin zones, and I'm way off, but there's got to be some benefits to not having a lot of cooks in the kitchen and overanalyzing and overthinking. Because in the NFL in general, like there's so much overthinking. I mean, how is Zach Wilson the 2nd overall pick? Like how many times did the Jets like talk themselves into circles to select Zach Wilson ahead of Justin Fields? You know what I mean? Probably a lot of people with a lot of opinions, and then they came to a terrible decision. Maybe there's a benefit to let's just not have as many people working for us and let's just get to it the right decision. I don't know.
I wrote all this was a story I spent a lot of time working on last year in the run up. It was during the playoff run, and it was my major piece before the Super Bowl. It was on the Bengals scouting staff, and a little bit of the vindication that came from everything coming together. They viewed the size of their scouting staff, which is, really why I had the numbers in that. But I mean, the Ravens have like 32 people in their personnel.
Oh, it's so over the top. Yeah.
30, and the Bengals had 6. Okay. And so they view that as a feat, not a defect. They view that as they know when a player comes in the building that everyone is on board with him. It's not GM is giving the coach a guy, because the way they use their coaches, those coaches have a voice, not just a little voice. Right. The coaches, coordinators, the position coaches, they do the reports too. They do the interviews too. They do full eval and work with the scouts to come and form the opinion. So inevitably, you have probably the same amount of people weighing in, but they are people from different corners of the building have to work together to make one player work. So, you don't want to just hand Brian Callahan and Dan Pitcher a quarterback that they don't want.
Never do.
And you can say that at every position. Yes. They don't want to hand a linebacker to Lou Anarumo that he didn't kind of want. They want his voice to be one of the major ones. And that is why they feel like they've been so successful over the years, and why Duke Tobin has told me since the first time I asked him this question like a decade ago, he said to me, look, I don't need more voices. I just need the right one.
Yeah.
That's his line that used.
I think where I love this concept, because I believe that too, as a former scout. Too.
As somebody who worked with Rex Ryan and Doug Marrone.
I do agree. It's maddening. If I could just tell, it's maddening how many times you could sit there and have 14 grades on one player. It's just over the top. I think why when we first started back in the mid 2000s, talked about the Bengals a lot, as far as not having scouting staff, I think it's because of the character, finding the background information. And now that things have evolved to the point where everything's an open book, you can buy a service, Blesto and National. The Bengals do all that. They get all that information just like everybody else. Now just grade the talent, and the coaches better be on board. And that to me is actually a sign of a great organization.
Yeah.
No, that's great. I mean, that's a great point. I think they struggled, and it exposed them before the technology overhaul and the total math. There is nobody that's going to get drafted that everybody doesn't already know everything about.
Right.
You know, you can get extra info. You can have relationships. Certainly, and I think that's an underrated aspect. Is I think that this coaching staff has a lot of good relationships across college and pro, and has a better feel for it than the previous staff did. And that's not a knock on Marvin, but I think his staff was typically older. It wasn't as in touch with the college. There wasn't as many guys that came from college ball up and back, up and down. And I think that you miss that a little bit. And I think there's a real thing to the connection with, you know, younger personnel guys that have really thrived and that are the top henchmen here. Steven Radistovich, Potts, who's their director of college personnel. You know, those guys, they're all kind of the same age. They came up the same way. They see it the same way. They have relationships in the college game. That helps. That helps give you a little bit of extra feel and an understanding of what the full team can look like.
No question.
Such a fantastic point. I love this.
Yeah, this is good.
Yeah, even like a really good team like the San Francisco 49ers. I remember doing a story at Bleacher Report on like them trying to become Super Bowl contenders after they won 3 games, but they're getting everybody healthy. And then they actually made the Super Bowl next year, I think. But I was talking to scouts there, and they were pretty unhappy. Like they felt like, okay, the coaches kind of have a little bit more say than they should on draft day. Like they're looking at highlight reels. They're not looking at the totality of the whole picture. Yeah, and then at any moment, Kyle Shanahan could come in and say, you know, take Joe Williams in the 4th round and he's out of the NFL in here. You know, it's so I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the perfect situation is, but that seems to be it, right? If you can somehow get people on the right page and streamline it.
Small circle for the decision makers. Yeah. Got to be small.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta have, you know, they call it their Bengal grade, like most teams do, but I mean, it comes from inevitably Duke is going to make that call, right. But it is, you're right. It's from, it comes down to, you know, I can't even tell you how many words I spilled on the Chase versus Sewell decision when that was going down, but you know, eventually they ended up in a circle of, you know, 6 people that had to be in the room at the end, you know, to sit there and say, all right, what are we going to do here? What is this decision? A defining decision for our organization going to be one of the toughest draft decisions I've ever seen a team have to make in a high stakes spot like that was at 5 overall. Burrow's getting crushed. You got to build the line. And here's this receiver, right? And what's happened? The league has followed that decision. Follow the money, follow the picks. Everyone has realized that was the right call. Get the receiver, pay the receiver. You got to protect, but you do the star tackle was not the right decision. I would think previous regimes and many coaches, I don't know what the percentage would have been if they were in the same spot, would have picked Sewell over Chase. They picked Chase, and it changed everything for them.
And Penei Sewell's really damn good.
He's a good player.
Like, he's a badass.
Hey,
I love
no,
like,
he's not the issue. There's no issues with him.
Right. Like, what you want.
No. It's a philosophical decision. It wasn't a player decision. And it was a philosophical decision of foresight amongst that group of how the NFL is going to change going forward. And then it did.
Right. And then look at the Dolphins trade for Tyreek. The Bills, they got Diggs. I mean, the Eagles traded for A.J. Brown and paid him.
You do not, when you have a franchise quarterback, when you have that in place, you do not add a left tackle for him unless it's complete available luxury. You give him a number 1 wideout if you can.
Yeah.
Diggs, Kelsey and Casey, however you want to say it.
Look at last night. Deion Dawkins is out.
It doesn't matter.
Judon leads the league in sacks.
It doesn't matter. You
doesn't
can't.
matter.
The way the rules are set up, you are not stopping a lethal 1-2 combo. You're not.
Yeah. No, and especially one that is somebody that only makes your quarterback happier, and not just because it's his dude. You know, I mean, it's like you didn't just give him a guy, you gave him his guy. And so that made it even, I think, an even greater decision. But it was, you know, it's just so interesting. It was so interesting to see something that was really at the cornerstone of like league philosophy, and to see that kind of shift in the moment and the Bengals going to the Super Bowl kind of helped, I think, push that forward a little bit in the copycat league. But, it was because they sat there and had the right people that made the decision, not because they had 80 grades on Jamar Chase. You know what I mean? I don't think having a tiny scouting staff is necessarily the reason it's great. I think the circle is right. I think they need more help. I think they could use more under people to help do stuff. There's no reason to not have that.
Great.
That said, I think they do have it right with the way the core should work and how everybody that's going to work with every player should be integral in that circle for those decisions.
That's a fantastic point. I mean, it is so funny, though. I feel like the draft industrial complex is a big problem here, too, because we talk about draft prospects like way longer than we used to. I can still remember being a kid, grabbing the one draft magazine you could get, the Sporting News magazine, and it was like our family would go on vacation, and me and my dad would pull out that magazine, and we would just talk about prospects in like March or April. And that was kind of when people started talking about, and even that was kind of new. Now it's like, right now, everybody's breaking these prospects down. And you overthink it, you hyperanalyze, and it became a point with the Sewell Jamar Chase thing where you were an idiot if you said they should take the receiver. I mean, you were a smart all-22 expert if you said they should take the lineman. Like, it just drives me insane. The group think and the draft experts and the sticks-up asses like a mile high. Just, it would be nice if Twitter would just spontaneously combust. I'd be okay with that.
No.
Almost. So, I totally agree with you. And we do not have the kind of time that you would get by sparking me in the draft industrial complex conversation, because it is insane. And the other part of it is,
you don't have your mock draft up at the Athletic? You don't get the mock up? Oh, 7 rounds? Come on.
I do the ones
that
I
season going on right now. You got to get that 7-round mock out.
I am trying to explain process, okay? People want to judge me off the fact that you got to pick right, or you like this guy and they don't think he knows how to work a 4-eye shade or some dumb shit. I'm just saying, like, no, I'm here to explain Bengals process. Like, I want you to understand how they work better. That's my job, not to judge your online tape grinding, okay? And that is the problem, is that everybody is sitting here going off on like, oh, well, I watched every tape. Okay, have you heard this man speak? Have you learned at all about who he is as a person? Do you know anything about who he was to affect winning and losing in the locker room at X school? Do you know anything about his family situation? Do you know anything about his view on work? These are the things that define.
I'm not feeling good about myself.
I mean, these are the things that, like.
But I agree with what you're saying.
Players, don't they? I mean, yes, the tape is huge. Like, that stuff is massive. But what really defines guys that hit and don't is the other stuff. And nobody that sat there and grinded tape and analytics knows anything about that. The teams do, and that is such a part. And they get ripped because they took a guy high or low that nobody understands, because nobody knows about the character.
I love it. Paul, I want you to just.
We got to do a draft. We're gonna have to do a draft special with all of us, because
you back on.
Let me calm down. Let me get a beer. Jesus, does anybody need one more than me now after you sparked that conversation? I'll need a few to be able to calm down before you take me down that road.
You're a legend, Paul. It is so good to have you here. Before we cut you loose, I just want to hear any Paul Brown story, because I read America's Game by Michael McCambridge. It's like required reading if you consume pro football in any way. I learned so much about Paul Brown in that book. It blew my mind. I feel like the average football fan doesn't really know his impact on the game. It's like it's Lombardi and Landry and Hallis and so many things we take for granted. Like Paul Brown just originated way back when. I don't know. Do you have any Paul Brown stories that like you'd like to share, or anything you think people should know?
I've talked to Mike a decent amount about his dad, and and those are always really enlightening. And myself and our mutual friend Jim Ozarski did a lot of work on the Bengals in their 50th anniversary of looking back at TV and a lot of the stuff that he did. But what I always love is the stories I hear from guys that were on the beat then, which shoot, guys like Peter King and when he first started here, and the guys that were and girls that did the job then. TV was as accessible as any human being could be, and I can only imagine to be covering an NFL team, and Paul Brown is just standing there on the sidelines, wanting you to come talk to him about football, the teams, the 50s, like evolving the game, and how you could just sit there, a reporter, and just listen to this guy who's a genius spill anything you wanted to know to him, and it makes me yearn for those days. I know we never will have anything like that again. But there's a part of that is why I enjoy every time we get to talk to Mike, because Mike feels the same way. He appreciates us. He likes being able to tell stories. He wants people to feel informed and understand, and he's unfiltered the same way Paul Brown was. And, I think that just to have that opportunity, I can only imagine what that was like. You should ask Peter, because he has told me some of those stories before, of just how lucky you felt to stand there where the Paul Brown's just kind of spilling his info to you.
I love that. I mean, maybe nobody even cares listening, but we could talk about accessibility and like that stuff matters so much. I mean, nowadays it's like I experienced it this week to an extent. You talk to a player, he's himself. He says something from a place of honesty, and it just gets thrown into the Twitter, ecosystem. There's backlash. He sees the backlash. He panics. He says he was taken out of context.
And then it's over.
And it's like, why can't we just be human beings talking to human beings?
I know. It's unfortunate because, you're right. The second someone acts real and acts like a human being, it gets used against them. And it ruins the relationship of the person you were talking to. You were just trying to relay their human quality as well, but there's not an appreciation for that anymore. Everything has changed. Now I really need a beer. You've taken me down a second wormhole.
That's right.
Like we're taking you all the way into the.
All right, go get a beer, Paul. You're the man. Thank you so much for doing this. You're busy as hell covering this team. For you to take a half hour longer than that, it means the world. So thanks so much.
Anytime. Yeah, have a good one. We'll see you soon, TD. You guys have a good one.
We'll see you soon. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, guys.